Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Rishi Chawla here. I'm partner with Premier Brains and looks after the business advisory side of business. Thank you for joining the webinar today on the topic of amendments to UAE economic substance regulations. I will be your host today. Without taking much time, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, and she is Bhavna Chopra. She is a chartered accountant and an MBA. She has over 16 years of working experience, primarily in the field of taxation. She started her career with Ernst & Young in 2004, where she worked for 2 years, and then moved to Schlumberger, where she worked for 7 years in Dubai. She joined Premier Brains in 2013 and currently heading the tax department with us. During the session, I'd like to request if you have any questions, please feel free to write in the Q&A section of the webinar. And I will take up whenever the relevant time comes, or we will handle at the end of the session. Now I'd like to hand over to Bhavna to carry on from here. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. Hope all of you are keeping safe. So as you all know, the main agenda today is to discuss about the latest amendments in the UAE economic substance regulations. So just to give you a background, so we have been conducting these ESR sessions since October 2019. So our very first session which we did was in fact immediately after the first guidance document was issued 1 year back in September 2019. And coincidentally, you can say that the session which we conducted was on 10th October 2019, and that was the very day when the news came in the morning that UAE has been removed from the EU blacklist. So that's how it all started, the background for the ESR, as to it was one of the requirements for UAE to comply with the OECD BEPS framework, and that's how it resulted in UAE being removed from the blacklist of non-cooperative jurisdictions. So just to go into the agenda for today's session, so we'll first cover background on ESR. We'll not go too much detail into the activities of the ESR, as we want to focus here in this webinar about the changes which have been brought into the law. And then we will briefly discuss what have been the developments in the ESR law since it was introduced in April 2019. Then we'll go on discussing the amendments which were brought in the ESR law in August 2020, which is last month. And we'll go on discussing the role of the authorities, the increased penalties which have been brought in the new law, and what is the way forward for the companies. So what are the action steps to be taken by the companies? And as Rishi mentioned, at the end of the session, we'll take some questions and try to answer them as time permits, or otherwise we'll separately respond on a one-to-one basis. So to start with the very briefly on the background of the economic substance regulations. So like I mentioned earlier that, why ESR was introduced in UAE was basically, it was part of UAE's commitment as member of the OECD inclusive framework. OECD basically stands for Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. So UAE joined this inclusive framework and committed to introduce certain minimum standards of the BEPS project of OECD. So BEPS basically is base erosion and profit shifting. So this was, actually to curb, the harmful tax strategies which were adopted by certain MNCs, to shift profits from higher tax jurisdictions to lower tax jurisdictions. And this actually resulted in the BEPS project, which came up with 15 action points as a result of the BEPS project. And one of such action points was Action 5, which was, to curb the harmful tax practices, which is the main basis for the economic substance regulations. So like I mentioned, it was UAE's commitment, and then it was UAE's response for the review which was done by the EU about the UAE's tax framework, and that's when UAE was put into the blacklist of non-cooperative jurisdictions, and then later on removed from the blacklist in October 2019 after UAE introduced the ESR regulations and then issued the guidance for the ESR regulations in September, and the very next month in October it was removed from the EU blacklist. And the other reason for UAE to bring the ESR is to ensure compliance, that the activities which are undertaken in UAE are commensurate and with the profits, and the profits are commensurate with the economic activity. So there is an actual substance to the activities which are conducted in UAE and the profits which are earned by the companies in UAE. Okay, so let's look at how the landscape has been so far for the economic substance regulations in UAE. So on 30th April 2019, the first set of ESR regulations were introduced through Cabinet Resolution number 31. And then in September 2019, there was a ministerial decision issued which contained the guidance on the implementation of the ESR regulations. And since then, we have seen, in January earlier this year, there were FAQs published, and then relevant activities guide was introduced. And then, in fact, most of the companies complied with the deadline of 30th June 2020, which was there for most of the companies with the 31st December 2019 financial year end. And many of the companies, submitted the notification, which was in compliance with the deadline, which was announced by the various regulatory authorities. And now we actually saw on last month, on 10th August, that the previous Cabinet Resolution 31, which was issued in April, was revoked, and a new ESR law was introduced by way of Cabinet Resolution number 57. And further, on 19th of August, an updated guidance and the relevant activities guide, which is part of the same document, was issued via the ministerial decision number 100 of 2020. So these are the developments, so far on the regulations front. And this is the reason which we are discussing here about, what are the key amendments which have been brought into the ESR regulations in August, and what it means for the businesses now, and also what it means in terms of the notifications which have already been submitted. Okay, so just to very briefly, just to touch upon that, ESR applies to these 9 relevant activities. So companies conducting any of these 9 relevant activities come within the scope of ESR. There are few exemptions listed in the law, which we will be covering. But these are the main 9 relevant activities, like someone doing a banking business, insurance business, investment fund management business, lease finance business, headquarter business, shipping business, holding company business, IP, intellectual property business, and distribution and service center business. So these are the 9 activities which form part of the ESR regulations. We won't be going into details about the definitions of each of these activities, but we will be covering those activities where the amendments have been made. Okay. So let's now, start digging deep into what are the major changes which have been brought in the ESR regulations and in the new law which came up in August 2020. So this slide is just to briefly give you at glance what are the summary of some of the major changes. So one major change is that a new authority has been introduced in the ESR law as the National Assessing Authority, which is FTA, Federal Tax Authority. Federal Tax Authority has been given the role of the National Assessing Authority. This was not there in the previous law. The definition of the licensee has been amended. So licensee is someone to which the ESR law applies, and the entity which carries on the relevant activity. So there have been certain amendments done to the definition of the licensee, which we will be covering in the next slides. And certain changes have been done to the definitions of like connected person. Definition has been changed, which is very important for some of the activities like the headquarter business and the distribution and service center business or high risk IP business. So there the connected person definition becomes very important. And in fact, a new concept of a group has been introduced in the ESR law, which again results into major changes, the way the assessment was done before, and it can result into some major change in the reevaluation of the assessment which was done. So we will cover them in detail. And then certain changes have been made to the definitions of the activities. So for example, some of the activities, the scope has been broadened, like in distribution and service center, the scope has been broadened. So we'll discuss that. And exemptions are like totally revised from the previous law. So previously the exemption was only limited, to the companies which have the government holding. Now, there is a completely new list of exempted licensees. So we will discuss that. And another change is that the administrative penalties have been increased in the new law. So it basically, shows that the seriousness of the regulators in bringing the compliance. Okay, so let's start, with one first major change which has been done, which is in the definition of the licensee. So as per the previous law, the licensee was defined as a natural or juridical person and to carry out a relevant activity in UAE. But if we look at the revised law, the natural person has been removed from the definition of the revised law. So now as per the revised law, it says any of the following entities, which is either a juridical person or an unincorporated partnership and carries on a relevant activity. So it clearly says in the revised law that licensee is a company which undertakes a relevant activity. In fact, in the previous law, there were some confusions as to, because some of the regulatory authorities during their notification submission were asking each and every company to submit the notification irrespective whether they were carrying on a relevant activity or not. But now if we look at the revised law, it makes it very clear that, a licensee covers a person which carries on a relevant activity. So we expect that, when the new notification format comes, then it will only be applicable to the companies which are carrying on a relevant activity. So in terms of, the exclusions which have been mentioned in the guidance, is that the natural person is not covered as a licensee. So sole proprietorship is not covered. Any trust or foundation is not covered. But unincorporated partnerships like limited liability partnership or general partnership or a joint venture company, a public shareholding company, a private shareholding company, or limited liability company will all be covered in the definition of licensee. Okay. So one next major change is in the exemptions. So the definition of exempted licensees. So as per the previous law, the only category of exemption was to the licensees which are directly or indirectly owned at least 51% by the government. But as per the revised law, this specific exemption is not there now for government owned entities. So they also need to see whether being a government entity also, if they are falling into the other categories of exemptions, then only they will be considered as exempt licensees. So what are the new categories of exempt licensees under the revised law? So investment fund has been considered as exempt. An entity which is, tax resident in a foreign country is exempt. Businesses which are wholly owned by UAE nationals or UAE residents and which are not part of a MNE group, and they don't carry out any activities outside the UAE. So basically, this is a welcome kind of relief by, those companies which are wholly owned by UAE residents, and they only have domestic activities and they are not part of a MNE group. So what is a MNE group is basically any group which includes 2 or more entities which are tax resident in different jurisdictions. So if you are not part of any such group and you're wholly based in UAE and had no group entities outside the UAE, and all your activities are fully carried out in UAE, then you are considered as an exempt licensee as per the ESR law. And one major, clarification has come for branches, for UAE branches of foreign entities. These have been brought under the purview of exempt licensees, provided their relevant income is subject to tax in the jurisdiction of their parent entity. So if on your UAE branch income, you are paying taxes in your parent country jurisdiction, then you will be considered as an exempt licensee. And then there is one general category which has been mentioned under the exempt category is any other licensee to whom Ministry of Finance grants an exempt status. But one major point to note here is that the exempt licensees are still required to submit the notification. So if you are covered in a licensee definition and you are carrying on a relevant activity, but then you get covered under the exempt licensee category, you still are required to submit the notification and provide a documentary evidence to substantiate your exemption status. So currently, not all the documents have been specified, like what exactly the document you need to give for an investment fund or a tax resident in a country other than UAE. So but what we can understand is that a tax residency certificate issued by the foreign authority can be given as an evidence. And if you are a UAE branch of a foreign company and your income is getting taxed in along with your foreign company's tax return, then you can provide that document of the income tax assessment or any other demand document from that foreign tax jurisdiction as a support of your exemptions status, basically to show that yes, your UAE branch income is getting taxed outside the UAE in your parent company's jurisdiction. So as we can see, these are such important changes which have been brought in the law, and these are clearly in line with the OECD BEPS initiative, because if you look at the other countries which introduced the ESR log, like the Cayman Islands or the BVI, these kind of amendments are very much in line with those jurisdictions. So this is a kind of a welcome move, in terms of these amendments, where the clarity has been brought about the UAE branches of foreign entities, or if a UAE company has a foreign branch outside. So those kind of great clarity has been brought in the ESR law. Okay, moving on. So another major change, which I would say is brought in the definition of the connected person, and a new concept of group has been brought in the revised ESR law. So if we look at what the previous law said, was that the connected person was a natural or juridical person who is related through direct or indirect ownership or common control or control. So it was like a very wide definition of almost, anybody coming under the purview if you are directly or indirectly related to them via ownership or control. And there was no concept of group in the old law. But if we look at the new law, a connected person definition says that an entity forming part of the same group to which the licensee or the exempt licensee belongs. So you have to be part of the same group to be called as a connected person. So which is, a major change from the previous law. So here, now you have to look at what is the definition of the group. One change which you can notice here is that the natural person is no longer included in the definition of a connected person. So for example, if you are purchasing goods from or providing services to a foreign individual, then it will no longer trigger the distribution and service activity, because a natural person has been excluded from the definition of a connected person. So it has to be an entity to becoming forming part of a connected person. So now if we look at the group criteria, so what is the group and how an entity will form part of the group is when two or more entities which are related through ownership or control, and such that they are required to prepare consolidated financial statements. So this is very important to note, that the consolidation criteria has been added for entities to qualify in the group definition. So now in the new law, if a company is purchasing goods from or providing services to entities which are not consolidated at intermediate or the ultimate parent level, then they will not fall under the group definition, and hence will not come under the scope of the relevant activity, which is relevant for headquarter business or the distribution and service center business or the high risk IP business, because it has a direct impact on the relevant activity classification, which deals with the companies which are not getting consolidated. So this is one important area which the companies should look at while checking the connected person criteria, is that whether your entities are getting consolidated or not. Because if they are not getting consolidated, then you will not fall into the definition of the group and hence not in the connected person. Okay, moving on. So distribution and service center business. So there are two parts of distribution and service center business. One is service center and the other is distribution center. So first we'll cover what are the changes brought in the service center business definition. So in the previous law, the services provided to foreign connected person in connection with a business outside the UAE. So if you were providing services to your foreign connected person and those services were related to a business outside the UAE, then you were covered in the scope of the ESR. However, as per the revised law, the connection with the business outside the UAE has been removed. So if you are providing services to foreign connected person, if it is related to the business inside or outside the UAE, does not matter. If you are covered in service definition to foreign connected person, then you will be covered in the scope of the service center. So as you can see, this scope has actually been expanded in the new law to cover the services provided to the foreign connected person, even in connection with their business in the UAE. So this is again one major change which can, result in a reassessment of the ESR activity which was done previously. So distribution business definition, again another key amendment which has been done in the distribution business is that as per the previous law, if we look at the definition covered purchases from foreign connected person, and then there were further criteria of importing and storing them in the state and then reselling those goods outside the state. So there were three additional criteria, requirements which were there in the previous law for an activity to be qualified under the distribution business. So it was importing and storing in the state and then reselling outside the state. But if we look at the revised law, the importing and storing part and also the outside the state part, the export part has been removed. So what it says as per the revised law now is that if you are purchasing from a foreign connected person and reselling those goods, does not matter whether you are importing or storing them in the UAE, and it does not matter whether you are exporting them outside the UAE. So even if you are purchasing from foreign connected person and then reselling them in the UAE also, it will still get covered. Or if you, since the importing and storing element has also been removed, so the scope has actually been expanded to cover the high sea sales or the drop shipment, third port shipment models, where there is no requirement as such to bring the good inside the UAE, and the goods are sold in high sea without bringing it into the UAE borders. So even those category of sales would come under the purview of the distribution business as per the expanded requirements in the revised law. So because this actually in fact is in very line with the OECD BEPS Action 5 framework, and if we look at the other countries' regulations also, such condition of importing and storing the state was not there. So in fact, this has brought clarity into the distribution business definition, and also brings into the intention of the law as such also, that the intention of the law is to look at whether there is a profit shifting happening or not. So even in the case of high sea sales or the third port shipment, there was a possibility of a profit shifting happening. But because the way it was worded in the previous law, there were some interpretations taken by some people that those would not get covered. But now that clarity has been made, and it is very much clear that the intention of the law is always to look at whether the profit shifting is happening or not. Okay, so moving on to the next change which has been done in the law is on the holding company business definition. So what it said as per the previous law was there were two definitions, the holding company business and the holding company. So the holding company was defined as, meaning as set out in the law governing such activity in the state, which was actually, left to look at the holding company definitions in either the UAE commercial law or the other free zone authorities law. But now this definition of the holding company is not there in the revised law. And further, in the revised law, the holding company business has been defined as a business where the sole function, the stress has been made on the sole function being the acquisition and holding of shares, and it only earns dividends and capital gains. So there should not be any other income, otherwise it will not form under the category of the pure holding company business. So for a pure holding company business, sole function has to be the acquisition of shares, and the income should only be dividends income or capital gains. There should not be any other income to qualify under the holding company business. And one interesting clarification which has been made in the new guidance is that if there are real estate assets owned by the licensee and those real estate assets are solely used for the purpose of the holding company, then it will still be categorized as the holding company business, provided there is no other income earned from those real estate assets. For example, there is no other rental income as such. So if it is holding company owns a real estate asset and it is only used for the purpose of the holding company without earning any additional income of that, so that might still get covered under the holding company business definition. So a clarification has been included that if real estate assets solely used for holding company business, those will still be part of the ESR under the holding company business definition. Okay, moving on. So here, we are covering the activities where the changes have been brought in the definitions of the activities. Like we covered the service center business, we covered distribution center business, then we covered the holding company business. Then another change has been brought in the high risk IP business category. So previously in the previous law, there were two conditions. We either A or B, if you fell under any of those conditions, you were categorized as a high risk IP business. So the A condition was that, if the licensee, you did not create the IP and you acquired it from a connected person or in consideration for funding R&D by another person, and you are licensing that IP to one or more connected person or otherwise generating income from that IP. And the second condition or the other condition was that the licensee does not carry out R&D, branding or marketing and distribution as part of its core income generating activity in UAE. So now if we look at the revised law, so this condition number B has been removed in the new law. So now it's only one category which is there, and all the conditions need to be satisfied to fall under the high risk IP business. So all of these conditions of did not create the IP asset, acquired the IP from a connected person or in consideration for funding R&D by another person, and licenses the IP to another connected person. But there is point to notice here is that previously the sale of the IP condition was not there in the previous law. So it was just the licensees, the intellectual property asset to one or more connected person. But now it's now broadened. Now the subcondition C has been broadened to include the sale of the IP as well. So just to summarize, what are the changes in the high risk IP business is basically the condition number B, which was previously there in the law, has been removed, and the subcondition number C has been broadened now to include the sale of IP as well. Previously it was only limited to licensing the IP. Now the sale of the IP is also covered. Okay, so another, this is actually a welcome relief change, a clarification which has been brought on the branch reporting in the law. So previously, the ESR law did not, contain any such clarity for reporting for branches. But now in the guidance and the law and the regulations, this clarity has been brought. Previously, the branches were required to do the compliance separately. But now it has been mentioned in the guidance that branches are considered just an extension of the head office. They are not considered as a separate legal entity. So therefore, they are not required to file a separate notification or the report. So if you have a company in UAE and if you have branches in UAE, then you are just required to submit notification as one entity and not separately from for the branches. So this was previously so much confusion earlier that, you know, if everyone has to do, if someone has 10 branches, let's say in UAE, so do they have to submit 10 notifications? Previously, that was the criteria earlier, and now the change has been made. And now it's very clear that branches have to do one notification. And branch of a foreign entity carrying out a relevant activity is not required to comply with ESR if the income is taxed outside the UAE. So like we discussed earlier, it comes under the definition of the exempt licensee. But if you are carrying on a relevant activity and then you want to go for the exemption status, then the documentary evidence will still need to be submitted to prove that your branch is paying taxes in the foreign jurisdiction as part of your parents' tax return. So that evidence will need to be given, and even the notification will still need to be given for exempt licensing. But there would be no reporting, ESR report requirements. And if you have a foreign branch of your UAE entity, then you are not required to demonstrate for that foreign branch, and you're not required to consolidate the income of that branch while doing your reporting in the UAE if the income of that foreign branch is taxed outside the UAE. Again, the documentary evidence will need to be submitted to the authority. So this clarity on the reporting of branches has actually, you know, will reduce the compliance burden for the companies. Okay, so timelines for notification. So as we all know previously, there were a lot of confusions, some in June, you know, when the deadline was closed, the 30th June deadline was closed, and many of the free zone authorities, you know, were having different dates of notification because there was no such date specified in the law, and it was left to the regulatory authorities to decide their timelines. But now in the revised law, it has been mentioned that the notifications will need to be filed within 6 months after the financial year end on the Ministry of Finance portal. So this is another major change, is that the Ministry of Finance will soon be coming up with the portal where the companies will need to submit the notification on the online portal. And it has been mentioned in the guidance and the FAQs is that the companies which already submitted the notification for the financial year end 31st December 2019 will be required to resubmit the notification in line with the new ESR law once the portal is active. So there is no deadline as such still specified by the Ministry of Finance. So we are waiting for further announcements as to when the portal will be live and what will be the deadline to submit the notification for the companies with 31st December financial year end. And we expect that the portal should be live in sometime in Q4, because then, you know, the deadline for the final ESR report, which comes at 12 months after the financial year end, will also be due in December 2020. So there has to be, within this Q4, the companies will have to first resubmit the notification on the MOF portal, then prepare for the final ESR report, which would then be due on 31st December 2020. So currently there have been no formats prescribed for the notification, the new notification yet, or for the final ESR report. We are waiting for further announcements from the Ministry of Finance. So As soon as those announcements come, we'll share those with you. Okay, so one of the change which has been made in the documents which need to be submitted while filing the economic substance report. So the final report, which gets due 12 months after the financial year end, the one of the document which has been included in the revised law is the copy of the financial statements to be submitted while submitting the economic substance report. In the previous law, there was no such specific requirement mentioned to submit financial statements. So this is an important, change to be looked at, because the entities which are conducting relevant activities will need to ensure that they have financial statements prepared and be ready for the 2019 financial statements to be prepared for the upcoming deadline. Though currently they have not mentioned that those would need to be audited, but sometimes the authority can expect it to be audited. But currently in the law, it is not mentioned that the audited financial statements are required. It just says that the financial statements need to be submitted while submitting the economic substance report. Okay, so some other clarifications which have been brought in the revised law are that, the definition of the relevant income has been included. Basically, it is mentioned that it has to be gross income from any source without deducting any type of cost or expenditure. And another clarification which has been brought is that the licensee will not be required to perform all the CIGAs, the core income generating activities. Any of the CIGAs which generate the relevant activity must be performed in the UAE, but there is no such requirement that all the CIGAs which are mentioned as a guidance in the law need to be performed. So any of the CIGAs which generate the relevant income must be performed in the UAE. It has been clarified that the activities which are not the CIGAs, like the back office functions, IT, payroll, legal services, can be outsourced to parties outside the UAE. Another key amendment is that, if you fail to provide evidence to substantiate your exemption status, like we mentioned that, for the foreign branches, for the UAE branches of foreign companies, you have to submit, a corporate tax assessment of your foreign company. If you're unable to substantiate that, give that evidence, then this could lead to that entity being subject to the ESR, and then you have to meet the economic substance test and file the ESR report. Basically, then you don't qualify an exemption status if you're not able to provide the evidence. So another clarification which has been brought is that the licensees which are carrying out the relevant activities will still need to meet the ESR compliance requirements even during the course of the liquidation. So if the entity is still in existence and the liquidation is ongoing, but it has not been completed, still be required to meet the ESR compliance requirement. This clarity was not there in the previous law. And another change which is there is that now all the licensees which are carrying out the relevant activity will need to identify the jurisdiction in which their parent company, ultimate parent company, or ultimate beneficial owner are based. So this requirement was not there in the previous law. Previously, only in the case of the high risk, you were required to, give the details of your parent company, ultimate parent company, and ultimate beneficial owner. But now, in the revised law, it has been included that all licensees which are carrying out relevant activity will need to provide these details. Okay, so this basically covered, all the major changes which have been brought in the ESR law. So now we will discuss the roles and the functions of the authorities which are governing the economic substance regulations. So previously there were only regulatory authorities and the competent authorities, but now in the new law, a national assessing authority has been appointed, which is the Federal Tax Authority. And there have been roles and functions assigned to the different authorities. So regulatory authority, as we know, are by the category of the relevant activity. So for example, for banking business, it will be central bank or the free zone. And then it will be the insurance authority for insurance business. Then Ministry of Economy is the regulatory authority. Then the free zone authorities are under the category of regulatory authority. So what are the functions of the regulatory authority? Are basically more of an admin role in terms of collecting the notifications and the reports and all the supporting documents and reviewing that whether those are complete or not. And then checking whether the exempt licensee has submitted sufficient evidences or not, and then giving their report to either the National Assessing Authority, which is the FTA, or the Ministry of Finance. So what will be the role of the FTA now? So FTA role is more in terms of assessing whether and determining whether the economic substance tests have been met by the entity or not, then imposing the administrative penalties, then hearing and deciding on the appeals, and providing information to the Ministry of Finance if the company has not met the test, or they are high risk IP licensee, or under the exempt category they are falling. So all these reporting will be done by FTA to the Ministry of Finance. So what will be the role of the Ministry of Finance is actually reviewing the information which is provided by the Federal Tax Authority. Since the portal will be made live by Ministry of Finance, so we understand that they will be looking after the form and the manner of the notification, and they will be responsible for exchange of information with the foreign competent authority, basically the authority in the foreign jurisdiction where the parent company or the ultimate current company or the ultimate benefit and the ultimate beneficial owner resides. So they will be exchanging the information with those foreign jurisdictions. Okay, so now looking at the penalties. So as I mentioned earlier that penalties have been increased under the new law. So let's look at, in comparison to the previous law, what were the penalties and now what are the penalties as per revised law. So if notification is not provided within the timeline, previously there was a range given in the law of 10 to 50,000, but now there is a fixed penalty of 20,000 dirhams. So it's no longer 10,000. So it's increased to 20,000 as a fixed penalty. If inaccurate information is provided or the information is not provided, then there is a fixed penalty of 50,000, which is a fixed penalty again and increased from the previous penalty. If there is first year of non-compliance of economic substance test, then there is a 50,000 dirhams penalty for first year of non-compliance. Then if there is a subsequent non-compliance in the subsequent financial year as well, then the penalty increases to 400,000 dirhams. So previously the range was 50 to 300,000 for subsequent non-compliance, but now as you can see, it's 400,000 dirhams, which is a very, very substantial amount. And in subsequent non-compliance can also result into suspension, revocation, or non-renewal of your license. So it is very important, for companies to properly do the assessment in light of the revised economic regulations and ensure that all the compliance is done fully, because the penalties are really huge if the regulations are not followed. Okay, so we have looked at, what are the changes which have been brought in the law, what are the role of the authorities, what are the penalties for non-compliance. So what is the next step now? What is the way forward? What are the actions which needs to be taken by the UAE companies. So the first step is to reassess. So do a reassessment of the relevant activity in line with the amended ESR law. So you have to look at whether that these amended definitions of distribution center, service center, or high risk, or even the definition of the licensee or exempt licensees, how it changes your company's position. So you have to do a reassessment and evaluate the impact of the law in line with the amendments. And then resubmit the notification when the portal is live. So if you have a 31st December 2019 financial year end, then the notification should be submitted anytime soon as the portal is live, because then the final deadline of the ESR report, which is 12 months, would also be due in 31st December. So we can expect, any time in Q4, early Q4, the Ministry of Finance portal going live, and then there will be announcements on the final ESR report. And then finally evaluate and submit your final report, review whether you are meeting the economics test requirements, and prepare for the final report submission. So this is just to reiterate. So revisit the assessment, whether you are in the scope or out of the scope. Resubmit the notification once the portal is live. Evaluate whether economic substance tests are met, and then file the annual report on or before 31st December for the year ending 31st December 2020 for year ending 31st December 2019. So this actually brings us to the end of our session today.